And as always, I just want to do a quick disclaimer that this presentation is for information purposes only. It's not legal investment or tax advice. If you do have any of those, please make sure you reach the person that invited you to this and schedule an appointment. We're happy to talk to you in further details. So to ask questions, please make sure you click on the question box. Don't forget to hit send. We will definitely stick around and answer your questions. Just a reminder, it's only the presenters that see the questions, so don't be afraid to send questions. They're all anonymous, but we will answer questions for you. So for those of you that are new to these webinars, we have several of these online workshops. We have building defensive portfolios, financial planning, structured income, social security structure, estate planning, many other wonderful topics. And of course, today's topic is something that we've been wanting to do for quite some time. So what we're going to cover today is a very brief overview of Protection Point Advisors. This is just a couple of minutes. We want you to know who's talking to you. The bulk of this presentation is the good, bad, and the ugly of Roth conversions. This is a huge topic. It comes up a lot for clients and prospects as well. So, of course, we're going to stick around and answer any questions that you may have. Just a quick overview of Protection Point Advisors. We have a couple of offices in Los Angeles, California, and Roseville, California. The firm started in 2008, and the history of it goes actually further back because we're a specialty investment group. We have financial advisors, CFP, CLUs. The bottom line is there's a very experienced support staff and experienced team here at the company. But most importantly, we have a dedicated financial planning team, and you're going to find out today why that is so important. As always, I want to give a quick shout out to our amazing staff. That's where the rubber really meets the pavement. And of course, all of our associates to the National Referral Network that creates that 3D asset care we're going to be talking about throughout the country. So we've got a lot of wonderful professionals that can help you with anything that's money related. So many of you are familiar with this slide. If you're not, I just want to tell you that the average family out there needs investment management, financial planning, retirement planning, estate planning, tax planning, of course, financial literacy, college planning, insurance planning, and everything that you see here on the screen. But the most important thing is to make sure that these elements are working together to create total asset protection. So today we're going to be talking about three key things in one presentation, and that is, of course, tax, estate planning, and retirement planning. So Roth conversions have all of these three elements in them. And if you're not familiar with that, you're going to find out why in just a second. And to go through the bulk of this presentation, I can't think of anyone more qualified than Rick Watson to take us through this presentation. For those of you that don't know Rick, he's one of the founders of Protection Point Advisors. I'll let him share his story really quickly, but just to summarize, he's been doing this for about 30 years, and today he focuses on working with advisors to teach them advanced money management tactics, as well as, of course, his clients that he's got throughout the country. So with that, I want to turn it over to one of the founders of Protection Point Advisors, Rick Watson, to kick us off with Roth conversions. Rick, are you there?
I am. So thank you, Patrick. We'll get back to Patrick here at the end. Just a brief little bit about me. I've been doing this, again, he's mentioned, for 30 years. And there was a point early in my career where I worked for one of the other big financial firms, and I just couldn't build what we wanted to there. I wanted to, I just couldn't make it work. And my dad had been in that industry for 40 years prior to that. And I said, look, I have to leave. I don't want to, but there's no other way to make this work. And so what we've done is we've built a really great home for advisors to allow them the freedom to be able to help clients the way we want them to be able to do it. And so I think we have something different, and I'd like to just tell you a little bit about what we've got on the Roth IRA front and all that's going on. So let's continue. Before we start, I think better place to start was what is a Roth, right? Well, it's kind of the opposite of a traditional 401k or an IRA. See, the money goes in after tax, and then it comes out tax-free, okay? And that's the opposite of a traditional 401k or IRA, where you put the money in pre-tax, or you get a tax deduction for when you put it in, and then it comes out and it's taxable in the future. So it's just the opposite side of the same coin. So how does money get into the Roth in the first place? Well, you contribute to a Roth IRA, or a Roth 401k, which are a fairly new invention. You can also do these things called backdoor Roths, and backdoor Roths are where you fund a traditional IRA and then you immediately convert it to a Roth IRA. So that's just another way of doing it. That's typically done for high income earners because there's an income limit to being able to fund a Roth, but there's not an income limit to fund a traditional IRA, and so they do this instant conversion, also known as a backdoor Roth. But today we're going to talk about traditional IRAs or 401ks and where people will do a conversion to a Roth. So let's talk about that. So first of all, we should talk about where Roth conversions came from in the first place and Roths in general. Prior to Roths, insurance policies and their cash values were used an awful lot like Roths. Basically, you could put the money into a life insurance policy, you got the death benefit along with it, and then you could take the money out with its growth tax-free. Worked really well. And it was funny because up until that point, the investment industry was very anti this idea until Roths came out, and all of a sudden they went, oh, this makes sense all day. And so Roths have become a very popular area. Roths were introduced in 1998, and they're relatively new in the investment world. Roth conversions are often misunderstood, and the one thing we see a lot is that they're not maximized. So we'll talk a little bit about that with some examples here in a bit. Before I do that, though, I want to talk a little bit about Roths versus traditional. Traditional 401ks and IRAs are tax deferred, and I can't tell you how many people think they're tax-free. So what happens is you put money into a traditional 401k or an IRA, the money grows tax deferred, and then at retirement, the money comes out, it's taxable. So Roths are what's unique there in that the money comes out tax-free. So in a traditional plan, you pay taxes when you withdraw the funds. All right, so what does a Roth do? Well, really, it trades a future tax rate for today's tax rate. So what you're going to say is, I want to pay taxes today on my Roth contributions and let the monies grow tax-free from then on out. This can be good, bad, or ugly, really, depending on the tax rate at the time that you take the money out of. So there's some elements to this. So what if future tax rates are higher? Well, then that's where it works really well because you get taxed today on the Roth and then it grows out in the future. If you defer money today, and I was just talking with someone prior to this call that put money into his plan and then he's going to have to take a whole bunch of money out after he passes, and he's going to be in a higher tax rate, then a traditional plan didn't work as well. So that's where we're figuring it out, whether we do Roth or traditional. Okay, so Roth conversions. Well, it's a one-way street. So, and that's the question. Is it a one-way street? Yes. There's no going back once you make that decision. And the other thing we have to worry about is something called the 5-year minimum rule. Basically, it says if you put money into a Roth, you have to do that, and then there's 5 years until that becomes, until you get the tax-free treatment of it. So blind Roth conversions. And the thing about blind Roth conversions is those are Roth conversions where you didn't really have a plan when you did it. You just kind of did one. Well, I think Roth's a good idea. I should do one. That's a blind Roth conversion. And frankly, I just love this graphic. I think that is so indicative of what people are doing. So there's a bunch of questions you need to ask before you do a conversion. For one is, do you have a full financial plan? Did the plan show the good, bad, and ugly side of Roth conversions? Did it analyze it? Why are you considering the conversion in the first place? Are you trying to do it for generational wealth or for tax savings? Because they are different animals, and we want to know that before we go into this. And then where are the taxes going to come from to pay for it? Because when you convert, you're going to take something that was tax deferred, and now it's going to become taxable in that year that you do the conversion, and it grows tax-free from then on out. But the taxes got to come from somewhere. So we're going to talk about that as well. Bottom line is Roth conversions should not be a one-size-fits-all approach. There's different size for different people, and we need to make sure that it fits you, how you're going to use it. So planning on taxes. When maximizing your Roth conversion, you should consider future tax rates. We've talked about that. And how the tax bracket of the conversion, or it's going to change the tax bracket. It's going to create a new tax bracket for that conversion. We need to know about that in advance. Okay, you'll see about this right now. We'll talk about some real life examples, and we'll start with the good, right? So we have Joe and Mary. Joe's got an IRA. He's thinking about a Roth conversion. So he starts with a PPA financial plan. And this is a financial plan. We're just going to show you a couple of slides. I know that slides like this can get confusing, but basically it's going to show cash flows. There's the green line, which is the inflows, and the red line, that's the outflows. And it's going to show detail of what your assets look like every year. What this does is allow us to do a couple of things. First, we can measure the result of something, and you'll see that here coming up. The second thing is that you'll get a year-by-year distribution of what all those things are. So the inflows, the investment income, the plan distributions, that's the retirement plan distributions, right? And how that might affect your taxes as well. So we can look at all these things. All right, so here's what I just love. And this is where we can actually measure it. Now, I get that there's a lot going on here in this chart. So let me just take a minute to explain. First of all, the Roth conversions are the yellow portion there, okay? Gold. And the income that that person's receiving are the blue bars that you see there, or the light blue bars that you see there. And all those lines that you see on top of that, those are tax brackets. So you can see when we did this analysis for this individual, we have the Roth conversion occurring over many years. And so they're doing multiple Roth conversions. We're doing those up to a certain tax bracket, and you can see that blue line, which is one of the tax brackets. And then we can see the result of this, okay? So the result, you'll see those gray lines right there, the gray bars, that is saying that we're underperforming in those years after we did this, but then we overperform in these later years, your total assets. And what we can see is this conversion allowed somebody to end up with $655,000 more than they would have previously. Ooh, well, that's pretty neat, okay? That's like a little laboratory of the individual. Now let's look at a bad example. So this is Steve and Kathy. And I just love this little decision center that we have within the financial planning. So many people will do a financial plan, but they don't even have this decision center, which allows us to analyze different scenarios. So again, you can see the Roth conversion. They did their Roth conversion here very quickly. So in 2 years, they did it much earlier in general. And you can see the tax brackets. They blew through some of those tax brackets. Well, what's the effect of that? One of the things is they didn't maximize those tax brackets. So the effect of this goes, well, as I said right here, and we've got these liquidation strategies. So in this scenario, that liquidation strategy meant for us that they were going to use the plan they were converting to pay the taxes. So it means they had to take out not just the money they wanted to convert, but also the money to pay the taxes on the conversion, and that changes how this thing works. It's part of the reason it pushed them up in a tax bracket. Well, let's see the result of that. Well, you can see that this doesn't work so well. The gray bars here are showing that they're having less assets than they ordinarily would have. You can see at the end here that they actually do gain a little bit. They end up with about a $49,000 gain. But there's a lot of risk for them, because what if they die in, say, 2033? Then they really the whole plan didn't work out too well. The only way this worked is they lived an awful long time, and then they didn't really get that much of an excess gain. So they might go, this is good, but it's not really that great. And so that was our bad scenario, okay? And then we've got Mike and Joanna, and you can kind of get an idea of how this might play out here. So they took all their distributions here very rapidly, and they took them later in life. And so we'll see. So they didn't maximize their tax brackets. I think you can probably see that right there as they blow through that green line. So let's see what happens. Well, it doesn't work out so well, and there's a lot of gray bars, And what we see here is, and then we have this risk. What happens if they die early? Well, then this whole thing really doesn't work well. But the thing is the gray bars I mentioned, you can see that this conversion actually ended up costing them $356,000. So again, this decision center is so helpful in creating a little laboratory of you where we can test various scenarios and find out what works best for you. When you do Roth conversions, you should start with a financial plan. And I think that's the take-home notes that we've got today. They are very valuable. You can create massive amounts of money done correctly, but done incorrectly, you can shoot yourself in the foot. With that, I'm going to shoot this back over to Patrick, and then we'll get ready for some questions. Patrick?
Thanks for that, Rick. I appreciate it. First of all, I see a bunch of questions. I promise we will get to those questions here in just about a couple of minutes. I want to wrap this up and talk about how you can actually get specific answers for yourself. So as Rick mentioned, if you joined us just a few minutes later, the backbone of a Roth conversion is actually a financial plan. So several questions you got to ask. I'm going to run through them really quickly. What's the best year to start a conversion? Specific yearly amounts to convert. If there are other incomes, it factors in, of course. How will taxes be paid? As Rick mentioned, one of the worst strategies I've seen is paying it from the IRA itself. There's got to be a strategy for that. How many years is it good to convert? Is it 2 years, 3 years, 7 years? That's all part of financial planning. And then ultimately, how much are you going to actually save, and in what year is that going to happen? So we have a 4-step process. I want to run through this really quickly for everyone so that you know how these Roth conversions are done. But they're done on a foundation of figuring out how you look at money. Then we take a look at your existing holdings. All of that leads to the detailed financial plan that you see circled, which is what Rick's been talking about. Without that plan, you would not want to be doing a Roth conversion. And ultimately, once that plan is done, we're going to take a look at those choices. The conversion, investment options, of course, is all part of that financial planning. And then, of course, we provide solutions to make sure that that plan works. So again, the idea of this entire presentation is to give you an overview of Roth conversions, the good, bad, and ugly side of it, but hopefully you got just a little bit about what to do and what not to do to get started. So one thing I want to mention really quickly, I sort of talked about 3D Asset Care. 3D Asset Care is the idea of protecting assets from every direction. We do this through live webinars with CPAs, tax attorneys, financial planners, estate planning attorneys, and other life events, such as even real estate or mortgages, refinancing, anything that our clients need, we bring live webinars. So make sure you talk to the person that invited you to find out more about our 3D Asset Care. We're in fact doing one tomorrow. If you are part of the company, if you're new to the company or just looking at us, you can join us and we talk about portfolios in the second half of that presentation. So with that, I'm going to ask Rick to join me again. Rick, there are several questions here that I want to jump to really quick. So are you there? Are you back with us?
I am. I'm right with you.
Excellent. So if you can, maybe we should go back to one of the slides with the tax bracket to answer this question. Tom's asking, do they pay taxes on the conversion when there's backdoor Roth? Do we want to talk about that?
Yeah, so you do. You actually do. So you put the money, actually, not, I said that wrong. So you've paid taxes on the money. You put it into the IRA, which would have been a tax deduction, but instead of getting the tax deduction, you're going to immediately convert it to the Roth. So in a sense, there's no tax for doing backdoor Roth because the money you put in was after tax. You never got around to taking the deduction. And so it's not taxable in the year that you do the conversion. On a regular conversion, the money's already pre-tax. It's been in there for a while, and so that money is taxable. And I think you said, Patrick, there was some question about the tax brackets. We just have the tax brackets drawn on this chart.
Tom's second question is the $200,000 an actual tax amount before being bumped? Let me look at the rest of the question here. Yeah, I think before being bumped into a higher tax bracket.
Right. Yes, that is. So those are the tax brackets. So this just shows you when you get bumped into a higher rate.
So Tom, to answer the question, I just recently did this with a client, and it was so interesting because what they had in mind was radically different than what financial planning showed them as the optimized way of doing it, because they were crossing those tax brackets And then through planning, we were able to let them know that it's best to actually convert more and then less in other years. So that's just to continue on what he was saying. Another question is talking about pulling 401k to Roth. So I think the question may be, Rick, that is that a specific set number? This is Tom's question is about taking 401k and going to Roth.
Yeah. So first, if you're in a 401k, so there's a bunch of sides to that. I think what he's suggesting is that there in most 401k plans today, they have a Roth provision. So you can put money in pre-tax or you can put money in after tax. Okay. And if it goes into the Roth side, then you're contributing to the Roth. You don't get the tax deduction for putting the money in there. You have to claim that money as taxable income in the year that you push it over. You can converting from an IRA or from 401k to the Roth side. You can do that as well. And that's a taxable event, and you do that with your retirement plan group. You just say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. You can also, if you're typically in most 401k plans, if you're over the age of 59 and a half, they'll allow you to take money out of the 401k. You could put it into a regular IRA and then convert that IRA as well. So that's just 3 different ways of accomplishing that. Roths are not the only solution. They are really cool in what they do, but if your tax bracket's going up, then they would be a bad idea, right? So if you're like a young doctor in your residency doing a Roth conversion, let's see, yeah, because your tax rates are going up, you might like that. But if you wait, but putting money in pre-tax would be you want to try to hit the right tax bracket is what we're trying to say.
Thank you for that. And Tom says, thanks, Tom. You're welcome. If there are any other specific questions that you can get offline with whoever invited you, Tom, and we're happy to answer those questions. Another question here, it's kind of a long one, Rick. I'm just going to sort of shorten it. The question is if you can clarify what we meant when we said don't pay the taxes from the IRA itself.
Oh,
I think
great question.
They're asking what we mean by that.
Yeah, so great question. So what we're talking about there is, if the best way to work these is if you have some after-tax money that's sitting in an after-tax account. So if you did this conversion and you had an individual account or a trust account, something like that after tax, you would pay the taxes from there and then you would convert the IRA to a Roth. That works better than if you're taking out additional money. So you convert the Roth, that's taxable, and then you pull more money out of the IRA, that's also taxable. That pushes your tax bracket up, which is why it doesn't work so good.
I hope that answers the question there. And another question is actually, it says, what is an early death option? Okay, so that's actually part of a decision center. I'm going to answer that question really quickly. Those of you that are not familiar with our financial planning process, the decision center is probably my favorite place in financial planning once we do everything, because it is a universe of endless possibilities. We could create anything from what if the husband passes away early, the wife passes away early. And I think in this particular case, they've created an early death, meaning so if the person was to pass away, what does that mean to the overall plan? And the team that does our financial planning, they could create any scenario when it comes to your situation, because like Rick said, no one size fits all. So that's what that decision center is. I hope that answers the question. Rick, did you want to add anything to that decision center? I know you've taken several clients through that.
Yeah, I just think you just explained it. It's any option, anything. What if I did this? What if I did this? So you can toggle back and forth and just see different options. It's pretty cool.
So there's a question here on who to contact. Tom, I would say probably the best thing you can do is take a look at our website, Protection Point Advisors. You can contact the office, and we can certainly connect you with the right person. Also, there's an email there, and we will certainly be happy to help you. He says, who would I contact? He says that he received an email, so I'm not sure who he would specifically contact. With PIA, with PIA Inc. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it may have been that they came through one of our other advisors. So that's why I think Patrick's being a little vague about that, depending on who sent you. Yeah, I mean, Tom, we can definitely follow back up with you and get you connected to the right place.
Happy to do that. And let me just say, so I appreciate the comments, by the way. There's people that said thank you, it's informative. I appreciate that. Another question is, let's see here. So here's a question, Rick, and that question is there a specific year to start conversions?
So it depends on your tax brackets and your situation. Like for we work with a lot of doctors that have they have an excess of income for certain years and they don't have any income, and they get a big lump and then none. So for them, doing it in that first year would be a really bad idea, but in the second, third, fourth year, it works out really, really well. That's why we have the decision center. In general, it works better to maximize tax brackets. In general, it makes sense to do it earlier, not later, but it's so dependent on what your other income is in those years. And in fact, we might even do an audible on this where we didn't think we were going to have a low tax year, but like, for example, a year like last year where most people had losses, not taxable income. And so for some people with large amounts of investment income, it was a great year to do Roth conversions because their income was down from what it normally looks like. So I think that's why we use the decision center, and we have to create a little laboratory of that individual.
I'm just sending so again, our website, for those of you that would like to know, it's protectionpointadvisors.com. Again, Protection Point Advisors. I'm putting that in the chat box, protectionpointadvisors.com. So please reach out to us if you need anything. So another question, actually, this is a great question on inheritance and Roth, actually. So I want to make sure we get to this. Rick, the question is, does inherited Roth have taxes for those inheriting the Roth?
No, that's what's so neat about them. That's why they work in estate, I should say income taxes. There could be estate tax issues for the person whose estate came out of, but no income taxes. And so that's where they might work out to be a really great opportunity. You can imagine, think about this. You might do a Roth conversion. This is why Patrick talked about earlier in the very beginning, he talked about this idea of there's all these different pieces and we need to make sure we're connecting to the right things. Well, this is from an estate planning standpoint. It might be great for example, mom who's in a low tax bracket to convert Roth, and she gives the asset to her son who maybe is very, very well off. And so he doesn't want more taxable income in his tax bracket, but mom could do it all day in her tax. So that's what you are doing. The Roth and regular IRAs are allowing you to pick the tax bracket that is best serving you. And so that's why strategy matters.
I appreciate that, Rick. So we're coming to the top of the hour. And on that note, by the way, there are Secure Act concerns. For those of you that are not familiar with that, please ask the person who invited you, or if you have been invited here, we're happy to talk to you about that. So there are other considerations when it comes to converting a Roth. And at the end of the day, I know we're going to sound like a broken record, but it is all about financial planning to make sure. So that's going to answer that other question that's up here. I don't want to dive too deep in the Secure Act on this webinar. That's a whole universe of its own. I don't see any other questions. Again, those of you that are looking to get information, please go to protectionpointadvisors.com. I put that in the chat box there. Feel free to reach out to the office and we will certainly connect you with the right person. Any other final questions, please throw them in. If not, we're coming up to 1 p.m. Pacific time where we like to wrap up the webinar. So with that, I want to thank Rick for taking the time for being here and sharing his pearls of wisdom. I encourage you to check out our webinar tomorrow, which is on 3D Asset Care. And we will discuss further on, we'll actually dive deeper into Roths and also answer portfolio questions. So have yourself a wonderful afternoon or late afternoon from wherever you're joining us, and we look forward to speaking with you in our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you again, Rick.